Captain Deho stood on the bridge of the Terra's Hope, watching the stars slowly drift past on the main screen. His ship was 3 weeks into a routine mapping mission in the Outer Rim territories. The work was peaceful but important. Humanity needed to know what was out here in the vast darkness between known systems. "Captain, we're getting a priority transmission from Earth," called out Hyunwoo from the communication station. The young officer's voice carried a note of concern that made Deho turn around immediately. "Put it through to my ready room," Deho said. Priority transmissions from Earth were rare, especially this far out. He walked quickly to his small office behind the bridge, settling into his chair as the holographic display activated. The familiar face of Ambassador Sunmi appeared on the screen. She looked tired and worry lines creased her forehead. Sunmi had been humanity's representative to the Galactic Council for 5 years now, and Deho had never seen her look this troubled. "Captain Deho, I need you to change course immediately and come to Nexus Prime," Sunmi said without any greeting. "We have a serious problem." "What kind of problem?" Deho asked, leaning forward in his chair. "The Galactic Council has formally accused humanity of aggression against other species," Sunmi explained. Her voice was steady, but Deho could hear the stress underneath. "They want all human representatives to appear before the full council within 7 standard days for a hearing." Deho blinked in confusion. "Aggression? What are they talking about? We haven't attacked anyone." "That's what I thought too," Sunmi replied. "But according to the charges, we've been violently disrupting the established galactic order and threatening peaceful civilizations with barbaric expansion methods. The council claims they have extensive evidence." "Evidence of what exactly?" Deho stood up, pacing behind his desk. This made no sense. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only 15 years, and they had always tried to follow proper protocols. "I don't have all the details yet, but the accusations include recordings of human ships approaching alien vessels in what they call an aggressive manner. They also claim we've been forcing trade relationships on species that didn't want them, and that our expansion methods threaten their way of life." Deho shook his head. "Sunmi, you know as well as I do that we approach other ships to offer help or establish communication. How is that aggressive?" "I know, Captain, but apparently other species see it differently." Sunmi rubbed her temples. "Look, I need you to get to Nexus Prime as fast as possible. You're one of our most experienced deep space captains, and the Council specifically requested that active exploration crews attend the hearing." "We'll leave immediately," Deho promised. "How bad is this situation?" "Bad enough that they're threatening to revoke humanity's membership in the Council and ban us from entering certain sectors of space." Sunmi's expression grew even more serious. "Captain, I've been doing this job for 5 years and I've never seen the Council this united against any species. Every major civilization has signed on to these charges." After ending the transmission, Deho returned to the bridge. His crew looked up expectantly as he emerged from his ready room. "Hyunwoo, contact all human vessels in this sector and tell them to head to Nexus Prime immediately," he ordered. "Bora, I need maximum speed to the council seat." "We have 6 days to get there." Engineer Bora nodded from her station. "I can push the engines to give us a 4-day journey, Captain." "What's the emergency?" "The Galactic Council thinks we're aggressive," Deho said simply. The bridge fell silent for a moment as his crew processed this information. "Aggressive?" repeated Wu Jin, the ship's chief scientist. "Captain, with respect, we're probably the least aggressive species in known space. The Klingari have actual warrior castes, and the Vextar solve disputes with ritual combat." "Apparently the Council doesn't see it that way," Deho replied. He looked around at his crew. Good people who had spent years helping other species, exploring peacefully and following every protocol they knew about. "Hyunwoo, try to contact Earth and get more information about these charges." As the Terra's Hope changed course toward Nexus Prime, Hyunwoo worked frantically at his station. After 2 hours, he finally managed to establish a connection with Earth Command. "Captain, I've got Admiral Park on the line," Hyunwoo announced. The stern face of Admiral Park appeared on the main screen. The head of Human Space Command looked as confused as everyone else. "Captain Deho, I assume Sunmi filled you in on the situation." Admiral Park began. "We're getting similar accusations against every human colony and exploration vessel. The Council claims we've been threatening other species for years." "What specific evidence do they have?" asked Bora from her engineering station. "That's the strange part," Admiral Park replied. According to their files, we've been aggressively approaching alien ships without proper invitation protocols. They have recordings of the rescue we performed last month when that Kef Collective merchant vessel lost power near the asteroid field. The rescue? Deho was even more confused now. We saved their lives. Their ship was drifting toward the asteroid field and would have been destroyed. Yes, but apparently we were supposed to request permission from the Kef leadership before offering assistance. The fact that we immediately moved to help them is being classified as unauthorized intervention. Wu Jin spoke up from his station. Admiral, that doesn't make sense. If we had waited for permission, they would have died. The ship had maybe 30 minutes before impact. I know, Wu Jin, but the Council sees it differently. Admiral Park's expression grew grimmer. They also claim that our method of establishing colonies is aggressive. Instead of waiting years for proper approval from neighboring species, we find empty planets and start settlements while sending diplomatic messages. They call this forced expansion. But those planets were uninhabited, protested pilot Minho. We always check for existing life and get proper surveys done. Again, I know. But other species apparently spend decades in careful negotiation before settling anywhere, even empty worlds. Admiral Park sighed heavily. Captain, the situation is worse than Sunmi told you. 3 major trade federations have already announced they're suspending all commerce with human worlds until this is resolved. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. Their entire way of life was being called into question by species they had tried to help and trade with peacefully. Sir, what are our orders? Deho asked finally. Get to Nexus Prime and help Sunmi prepare our defense. We need to convince the Council that they've misunderstood human intentions. Admiral Park leaned forward. Captain, this isn't just about trade or politics. If we lose this hearing, humanity could be banned from most of known space. We'd be trapped in our own small corner of the galaxy. After the transmission ended, Deho gathered his senior staff in the ship's conference room. The small space felt cramped as they tried to make sense of the accusations against them. I've been reviewing our interactions with other species, reported diplomat So Young, who served as the ship's cultural liaison. Captain, I think the problem might be deeper than we realized. Every species we've encountered follows very different protocols for contact and expansion. What do you mean? Asked Deho. Well, when we approach an unknown ship, we immediately open communication channels and offer assistance if needed. But I've been reading about other species' first contact procedures. The Veltari spend weeks observing before making any contact attempt. The Oceani require formal introduction through a third party before any direct communication. That seems inefficient, commented Bo-Ra. What if the ship needs immediate help? That's exactly the point, So Young continued. Other species prioritize careful protocol over quick action. To them, our immediate response probably looks chaotic and threatening. Security Chief Dong Hyun, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. So they think we're aggressive because we act fast? It's more complicated than that, So Young replied. From what I can gather, most galactic civilizations have evolved to be extremely cautious in their interactions. They spend years, sometimes decades, in careful negotiation before taking any significant action. Our human tendency to see a problem and immediately try to fix it goes against everything they understand about proper behavior. Deho stood up and walked to the small window in the conference room, looking out at the stars rushing past. So our greatest strength, the ability to respond quickly to emergencies and opportunities, is being seen as our greatest weakness. It appears that way, Captain, So Young confirmed. As the Terra's Hope raced toward Nexus Prime, Deho couldn't help but think about all the times his crew had helped other species. The medical supplies they had rushed to the plague-stricken colony on Kepler-7. The emergency repairs they had performed on the damaged research station near the black hole. The trade agreements they had established that brought prosperity to dozens of worlds. All of it was now being called aggression. Captain, Hyun-Woo called from the bridge. We're receiving similar reports from other human vessels. It seems like every ship in the fleet is being recalled to defend humanity's actions. Deho returned to the bridge and looked at the star field ahead. Somewhere out there at Nexus Prime, the fate of the massive space station of Nexus Prime appeared on the Terra's Hope's main screen, like a small moon made of metal and crystal. Deho had seen pictures of the Galactic Council's headquarters before, but seeing it in person was still impressive. The station was easily 50 kilometers across, with docking bays that could accommodate thousands of ships from hundreds of different species. "Captain, we're being directed to Docking Bay 77 Alpha," reported Minho from the pilot station. "There are already 12 other human vessels docked in that section." "Good, we won't be facing this alone," Deho replied. He watched as their ship slowly approached the designated docking bay. Other human ships were visible in the nearby berths, exploration vessels, research ships, and even a few military cruisers that had been called back from patrol duty. As the Terra's Hope settled into its docking clamps, Deho felt a knot of worry in his stomach. In a few hours he would be sitting in the Great Council chamber, listening to formal accusations against his entire species. "Captain, Ambassador Sunmi is requesting all ship commanders report to Conference Room 12 on Station Level 5, announced Hyunwoo. "Bo-Ra, so Young Woo Jin, you're with me," Deho decided. "Everyone else stay with the ship and monitor communications." The human delegation gathered in a sterile white conference room that felt too small for the 15 ship captains and their senior staff. Ambassador Sunmi stood at the head of the table, looking even more tired than she had during their transmission. "Thank you all for coming so quickly," Sunmi began. "I know this situation is confusing, but I've learned more about the charges against us. The news isn't good." She activated a holographic display that showed the council chamber. "Tomorrow morning we'll be facing representatives from 47 different species. The charges have been formally presented by the Veltari, but they have support from almost every major civilization in the galaxy." Captain Eugene from the medical ship Hippocrates raised her hand. "Sunmi, I've been treating alien patients for 8 years. How can medical assistants be considered aggressive? That's actually part of the problem," Sunmi replied grimly. "Let me show you some of the evidence they've compiled." The holographic display changed to show a recording of a human medical ship approaching a disabled alien vessel. "This is footage from 6 months ago when the Oceani research vessel Gentle Current suffered a reactor leak. Captain Eugene, your ship responded to their distress call." "Of course we did," Eugene said. "They had radiation poisoning. People were dying." "Yes, but watch how the council sees it." Sunmi played the recording again, this time with commentary. "According to Oceani protocols, a distress call is not a request for immediate assistance. It's an announcement that a problem exists. Other ships are supposed to relay the message to proper authorities who then begin a formal assistance process. How long does that process take?" asked Captain Tae-young from the research vessel Discovery. In this case, it would have taken 4 days for the Oceani government to review the situation, consult with medical experts, and authorize outside assistance, Sunmi explained. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that the crew of the Gentle Current would have been dead long before 4 days passed. "But we saved their lives," protested Eugene. "Yes, and that's why the charges are so confusing," Sunmi admitted. "The Oceani themselves submitted a formal thank you message to the council. But other species see your immediate response as evidence that humans don't respect proper procedures." So, Young spoke up from her seat next to Deho. "Sunmi, this sounds like a fundamental difference in how our cultures approach emergency situations." "Exactly. And it gets worse." Sunmi changed the display again. "Here's another piece of evidence. The trade agreement Captain Dong Hyun established with the mining colony on Tau Ceti 3. Captain Dong Hyun from the cargo vessel New Seoul looked confused. "That was a standard trade negotiation. They needed medical supplies, we needed rare metals. Both sides benefited." "Yes, but you initiated the contact," Sunmi explained. "According to the testimony from the Tivel representative, proper protocol requires that trade relationships be established through formal channels with years of preliminary cultural exchange." "Years?" Dong Hyun shook his head. "They needed antibiotics for a bacterial infection that was spreading through their colony. We had the medicine they needed. Why would we wait years to help them?" "Because other species prioritize proper procedure over immediate results," Sunmi said. "From their perspective, your direct approach and quick agreement looks like you forced them into a trade deal." Woo Jin had been quiet during the discussion, but now he raised his hand. "Sunmi, can you show us what proper first contact looks like according to these other species?" Sunmi nodded and brought up a new display. "This is a recording of Veltari first contact with a new species called the Meridian Unity. Watch carefully." The recording showed 2 ships in space, but they were separated by thousands of kilometers. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The Veltari ship spent 3 weeks observing the Meridian vessel from a distance, Sunmi explained. They recorded communication patterns, energy signatures, and behavior patterns. Only after this observation period did they send a single mathematical message. What happened next? Asked Captain Bora. The Meridian ship sent a mathematical response 6 days later. Then both ships spent another month exchanging increasingly complex mathematical and scientific concepts. After 3 months of this communication, they finally agreed to meet face to face. 3 months? Deho couldn't hide his amazement. We usually try to establish voice communication within hours of detecting a new ship. And that's the problem, Sunmi said. Humans see a ship and immediately want to talk to whoever is on board. Other species see that as aggressive and invasive behavior. Captain Minho from the patrol vessel Guardsman leaned forward. So they think we're aggressive because we're friendly? In a way, yes, but there's more. Sunmi brought up another display showing human colony ships. The Council also objects to our expansion methods. When we find an uninhabited planet suitable for colonization, we land and start building while sending diplomatic messages to neighboring systems. Other species spend decades in negotiation before settling anywhere. But the planets we colonize are empty, protested Captain Tae-young. We always make sure there's no existing life. That doesn't matter to them, Sunmi explained. The Kef Collective, for example, believes that all planets within 50 light-years of their space belong to them, even if they've never visited those worlds. When we settled New Busan, they saw it as an invasion of their territory. But New Busan is 70 light-years from the nearest Kef world, said Deho. Yes, but we didn't ask permission first. According to their cultural practices, any species wanting to expand into that region should have spent at least 10 years in formal negotiations with the Kef leadership. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as the human captains tried to process this information. Their entire approach to exploration and diplomacy was being called into question. Captain Yu Jin raised her hand again. Sunmi, what about all the times we've helped other species? The emergency medical assistance, the disaster relief, the peacekeeping missions? That's actually making things worse, Sunmi replied sadly. The Council sees our rapid response to emergencies as evidence that we don't respect other species' sovereignty. When the Zephyrian colonies were hit by those solar flares last year, and our ships arrived with aid within 2 days, the Council recorded it as unauthorized intervention in natural selection. Natural selection? Deho stood up angrily. Those were people's lives. I know, Captain, but many species in the galaxy believe that disasters are part of natural order. They think that interfering with natural events, even to save lives, is wrong. So Young had been taking notes throughout the meeting. Sunmi, it sounds like the fundamental issue is that humanity values quick action and immediate help, while other species value careful deliberation and respect for established procedures. Exactly. And now the Council has to decide whether human behavior represents dangerous aggression or just cultural differences. What happens if they decide we're too aggressive? Asked Captain Dong Hyun. Sunmi's expression grew even more serious. Best case scenario, we get restricted to human space only. Worst case, they ban us from most of the galaxy and terminate all existing trade agreements. Some of the more extreme members are even suggesting that human colonies in disputed regions should be evacuated. The room fell completely silent. The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent 15 years building relationships with dozens of species, establishing trade routes, and exploring the galaxy. All of that could be lost because other species thought humans acted too quickly. When does the hearing begin? Asked Deho. Tomorrow at 0800 station time. The full council will be present, over 200 representatives from 47 species. Sunmi looked around the room at each captain. I need all of you to think carefully about your interactions with other species. We need to find a way to explain human behavior that the council can understand and accept. Sunmi, what's our defense strategy? Asked Captain Eugene. Honestly, I'm not sure yet. This is unlike anything I've dealt with before. Sunmi rubbed her temples. Every species that's testified ag. The Great Council Chamber of Nexus Prime was unlike anything Deho had ever seen. The circular room stretched hundreds of meters in every direction, with seating areas designed for dozens of different species. Crystalline platforms held the tall, translucent Veltari representatives. Underwater viewing chambers allowed the aquatic oceani to participate. Environmental suits contained the methane-breathing KEF collective members. In the center of it all sat a raised platform where the accused would present their case. Daeho took his seat in the human delegation section alongside Ambassador Sunmi and the other ship captains. Around them, representatives from 47 different species watched with expressions, ranging from curiosity to concern to what looked like fear. This session of the Galactic Council will now begin, announced Council Speaker Yelteth, a tall Veltari whose crystalline body caught and reflected light as she moved. We gather to examine the charges of aggressive expansion and unauthorized intervention brought against the species known as humanity. The human delegation sat quietly as Speaker Yelteth outlined the formal charges. After 15 minutes of legal language, she turned to the prosecution section. Representative Pelandra of the Oceani will present the evidence against humanity. A graceful, blue-skinned being rose from her water-filled chamber. Even through the translation system, her voice carried a musical quality that made her words sound almost like a song. Honored council members, we present evidence of a species that threatens the very foundation of galactic civilization, Pelandra began. For 15 years, humanity has consistently violated established protocols for contact, expansion, and intervention. The main display in the chamber activated, showing recordings of human ships in action. Daeho recognized several of the scenes: rescue operations, first contact situations, and emergency medical responses that he had either participated in or heard about from other captains. Observe this recording from 8 months ago, Pelandra continued. The screen showed the human vessel guardsman approaching an unknown alien ship. Watch how the human vessel immediately closes distance and begins communication attempts within minutes of detection. Proper protocol requires weeks of careful observation before any contact attempt. Representative Zixara from the insectoid KEF collective rose to speak next. His translation device gave his words a mechanical quality. The collective has observed human behavior for 5 years. They approach our vessels without invitation, speak directly to our drones without proper hierarchical introduction, and attempt to establish individual relationships rather than working through our central authority. What specific harm has this caused? Asked Councilmember Nulveth of the gas giant dwelling ethers. They create confusion in our collective consciousness, Zixara replied. When individual drones receive direct communication, it disrupts our unified thought processes. Their rapid approach and immediate communication attempts trigger our defensive protocols. More evidence was presented throughout the morning. The council saw recordings of human colonies being established on empty worlds, human medical ships responding immediately to distress calls, and human traders offering goods to species who hadn't formally requested trade relationships. During a recess, Ambassador Sunmi gathered the human delegation in a small side chamber. This is worse than I expected, she admitted. They're not just questioning our methods. They're questioning whether our entire approach to civilization is compatible with galactic society. Sunmi, what are we supposed to do? Stop helping people in emergencies? Asked Captain Yujin. That might be exactly what they want, So Young said quietly. She had been taking notes throughout the morning session. I've been listening to their concerns, and I think I understand the real problem. What do you mean? Asked Daeho. Every species in this council has evolved to prioritize stability and predictability. They've spent thousands of years developing careful protocols that ensure no one gets surprised or overwhelmed by rapid changes. So Young looked around at the other humans. Then we arrived and started doing things immediately without asking permission first. Captain Dong-hyun shook his head. But we've helped them. Our medical assistance has saved millions of lives. Our trade agreements have brought prosperity to dozens of worlds. Yes, but we also forced them to make quick decisions, So Young continued. When we show up offering immediate help, they have to choose right then whether to accept or refuse. Other species give them months or years to think about such decisions. When the session resumed, it was humanity's turn to present their case. Ambassador Sunmi stood and walked to the central platform. Looking small in the vast chamber surrounded by hundreds of alien representatives. Honored council members, humanity stands accused of aggression, but we ask you to consider another interpretation of our actions, Sunmi began. What you call aggressive intervention, we call emergency response. What you call forced expansion, we call settling empty worlds while seeking proper approvals. What you call unauthorized contact, we call offering friendship and assistance. The main display showed new recordings, the same events that had been presented as evidence against humanity, but with additional context. The rescue of the Oceani research vessel included casualty reports showing that all crew members would have died without immediate assistance. The trade agreement with the mining colony showed medical reports of the bacterial infection that was spreading rapidly through their population. We present Captain Minho of the vessel guardsmen, Sunmi announced. He will explain human emergency response protocols. Minho walked nervously to the platform. He had never spoken to an audience this large or this important before. Honored representatives, when a human sees someone in danger, we help immediately. We don't wait for permission because people die while we're asking for it. Captain Minho, interrupted Representative Pelandra, do you not understand that some species prefer to handle their own problems without outside interference? With respect, Representative, I understand that different species have different preferences, Minho replied. But when someone is about to die, their preferences become less important than their survival. A murmur went through the chamber. Several species began discussing this response among themselves. Council Speaker Yalteth called for order. Captain Minho, are you saying that human judgment about life and death situations should override other species' cultural practices? Minho looked uncomfortable. I'm saying that when someone is in immediate danger, helping them should be the first priority. We can discuss cultural practices after we make sure they're still alive to have that discussion. Next, So-Young was called to explain human cultural practices. She had spent hours preparing for this moment, trying to find a way to make other species understand human nature. Honored Council, humanity evolved on a dangerous planet where quick decisions meant the difference between survival and death. She began. When we see a problem, our instinct is to solve it immediately. When we meet new people, our instinct is to offer friendship and help right away. But surely you understand that such rapid action can be threatening to species that prefer careful deliberation, asked Council Member Velkin of the tree-like Sylvans. Yes, we're beginning to understand that, So-Young admitted. But we ask the Council to consider this. In the 15 years since humanity joined the galactic community, how many lives have been saved by our rapid response to emergencies? She activated her own display, showing statistics that made several council members gasp. Human medical intervention has saved approximately 2 million alien lives that would have been lost while waiting for proper authorization procedures. Human disaster relief has prevented the complete loss of 17 colonies during natural disasters. Human peacekeeping has stopped 12 wars before they could escalate into system-wide conflicts. But at what cost? Demanded Representative Zixara. Your rapid interventions disrupt established order. They force other species to change their careful plans and procedures. Captain Yu Jin stood up from the human delegation. Representative Zixara, may I ask you a question? Speaker Yalteth nodded permission. If your own child was drowning and a human was nearby, would you want us to ask permission from your collective leadership before pulling them out of the water? Or would you want us to save them immediately? The chamber fell completely silent. Representative Zixara's translation device was quiet for several long moments before he responded. That is not a fair comparison. Individual lives and collective policies are different matters. Are they? Eugene asked. Because every emergency we respond to, every person we help, every life we save, those are all individual lives that matter to someone. Your collective policies are important, but they shouldn't be more important than preventing death and suffering. Wu Jin was called next to explain human scientific cooperation methods. Honored Council, when humans encounter a new scientific problem, we immediately share information with anyone who might be able to help solve it. We've contributed to medical breakthroughs that have benefited dozens of species, not because we wanted to interfere in your research, but because we wanted to eat chi. The second day of hearings began with a surprise. As the human delegation entered the council chamber, they found several alien representatives waiting to speak with them privately. Representative Nixara of the recently contacted Meridian Unity approached Ambassador Sunmi directly. Ambassador, my people would like to testify on behalf of humanity. The tall, pale-skinned alien said, We believe the council needs to hear a different perspective on human behavior. Sunmi looked surprised. Representative Nixara, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want your people to risk their standing with the council by defending us. With respect, Ambassador, our standing with the Council matters less than the truth, Nixara replied. The Meridian Unity exists today because humans acted quickly when we needed help. As the session began, Council Speaker Yalteth announced an unexpected change in the day's schedule. Several Council members have requested permission to present additional testimony regarding human behavior. We will hear these statements before continuing with the formal proceedings. Representative Nixara was the first to speak. She walked to the central platform with confidence, despite being one of the newest members of the Council. Honored representatives, 18 months ago, the Meridian Unity's colony ship suffered a catastrophic system failure while transiting between star systems. Our life support was failing, our engines were dead, and we had perhaps 6 hours before our population of 40,000 would begin dying from oxygen deprivation. The chamber was completely silent as she continued. According to established galactic protocols, we should have sent a distress message and waited for proper authorities to organize a rescue mission. Do you know how long that would have taken? She activated a display showing the paperwork and authorization procedures involved in organizing a multi-species rescue operation. Minimum 14 hours to verify our distress, contact appropriate rescue services, and dispatch aid. Our people would have been dead for 8 hours by the time help arrived. What actually happened? Asked Council Member Velkan. The human exploration vessel New Sol detected our distress signal and immediately changed course to assist us. They arrived 4 hours later and began emergency evacuation procedures without waiting for any authorization. Nixara's voice grew stronger. Captain Donghyun and his crew saved 40,000 lives because they acted immediately, instead of following proper procedures. Representative Zixara of the Kef Collective stood up. But surely you understand that such rapid intervention could have been dangerous. What if the humans had made the situation worse? Representative Zixara, with respect, how could they have made it worse? Nixara replied. We were already dying. The worst thing the humans could have done was fail to save all of us. The best thing they could do was save as many as possible. They chose to try and they succeeded. Next to speak was Dr. Velthana, a Veltari medical researcher. Her crystalline form glowed softly as she addressed the Council. Honored colleagues, I have worked with human medical personnel for 3 years. I initially found their methods disturbing and chaotic. They make treatment decisions in minutes that we would typically spend days analyzing. And what is your assessment of these methods now? Asked Speaker Yalteth. Their rapid diagnosis and treatment protocols have a patient survival rate that is 37% higher than standard galactic medical procedures, Dr. Velthana admitted. While I personally find their speed uncomfortable, I cannot argue with their results. She activated her own display showing comparative medical statistics. In emergency situations, human medical teams save lives that would be lost using our more careful approaches. Their willingness to begin treatment immediately, even without complete diagnostic information, means that critical patients receive help during the window when intervention is most effective. But what about the risk of making incorrect diagnoses? Asked Dr. Kelthara from the Veltari Science Directorate. Human doctors are trained to constantly reassess and adjust their treatments as new information becomes available, Dr. Velthana explained. Rather than waiting for perfect information before acting, they begin with their best guess and improve their approach as they learn more. It's actually quite elegant, though it took me time to appreciate it. Commander Cathval of the Oceani Defense Forces spoke next. The Council has heard concerns about human intervention in conflicts. But I have seen their peacekeeping methods firsthand. Please explain. Commander, requested Speaker Yalteth. During the territorial dispute between my people and the Sylvan colonies over the Trappist system, both sides were preparing for military action. Standard Council mediation procedures would have taken months to organize, and war seemed inevitable. Cathval's water-filled chamber amplified his voice as he spoke. Captain Minho of the human vessel Guardsman arrived in the system and immediately requested permission to facilitate negotiations. The humans organized face-to-face meetings between our leaders within 2 days. Instead of the formal diplomatic protocols that would have required weeks of preparation, they simply transported representatives from both sides to a neutral location and provided translation services. And the result? Asked Council Member Nolveth. We reached a peaceful agreement in 4 days. The speed of the process didn't give either side time to escalate their positions or build up military forces. Human rapid mediation prevented a war that could have lasted years and cost thousands of lives. Representative Palandra of the Oceani looked uncomfortable. Commander Kethval, surely you understand that such rapid problem-solving doesn't address the underlying cultural and historical issues that created the conflict. Representative Palandra, you're correct that we didn't resolve centuries of cultural differences in 4 days, Kethval replied. But we prevented immediate violence, and that gave us time to work on the deeper issues peacefully. Sometimes stopping the bleeding is more important than performing perfect surgery. The testimony continued throughout the morning. Representatives from a dozen different species shared stories of human assistance that had saved lives, prevented conflicts, or solved urgent problems. Each story followed the same pattern: humans acting quickly while other species were still organizing proper responses. During the midday recess, Ambassador Sunmi gathered with her team to review the morning's testimony. "This is better than I hoped," she admitted. "I didn't expect other species to defend us so directly. Sunmi, I think the younger species understand us better than the older council members," observed So Young. The Meridian Unity, the Tau Centauri colonies, the frontier settlements. They've all had direct experience with human assistance. Captain Yujin nodded. The species that have been in the council longest seem the most concerned about our methods. It's the newer members who appreciate quick action. That makes sense, added Wujin. Established civilizations have had time to develop elaborate procedures for everything. Frontier communities face emergencies where slow responses mean death. When the session resumed, the focus shifted to human trade and exploration practices. Representative Golvek of the Tau Centauri Mining Consortium addressed the charges of forced commerce. Honored Council, the accusation that humans force trade relationships is based on a misunderstanding of how commerce works in frontier regions. The short, stocky alien began. When humans approach mining colonies or frontier settlements with trade offers, they're not forcing anything. They're providing opportunities. Can you be more specific? Asked Speaker Yalteth. Certainly. When Captain Dong Hyun offered to trade human medical supplies for rare metals from our Kepler 442 colony, we were facing a crisis. Our colonists were dying from a bacterial infection, and the nearest galactic medical facility was 3 months away by conventional transport. Golvek activated a display showing the infection's progression through the colony. Using standard council procedures, we would have submitted a formal request for medical assistance, waited for authorization from the Medical Oversight Committee, then waited for a proper medical mission to be organized and dispatched. Total time approximately 4 months. And the human approach? Asked Council Member Velkan. Captain Dong Hyun offered immediate assistance in exchange for a fair trade of minerals we had in abundance. The deal was completed within hours. The medicine was delivered the same day and our colonists were cured within a week. Golvek looked around the chamber. How is providing life-saving assistance in exchange for fair compensation considered forced commerce? Representative Palandra spoke up. The concern is that humans pressure other species into making quick decisions without proper consultation time. Representative Palandra, may I ask what you consider proper consultation time when people are dying? Golvek replied. Our colonists didn't have months to think about whether they wanted to be saved. They needed help immediately. The afternoon session focused on exploration and colonization practices. Captain Tae-young was called to explain human settlement methods. Honored Council. When humans discover an uninhabited planet suitable for colonization, we begin settlement operations while simultaneously opening diplomatic communications with any neighboring species, he explained. This approach allows us to establish a presence quickly, while still respecting other species' territorial claims. But surely you understand the third day began with an unexpected announcement. As the council session opened, Speaker Yalteth stood before the assembled representatives with a troubled expression on her crystalline features. Honored colleagues, before we begin our deliberations on the human question, we have received an urgent distress signal from the Kepler 78 system. A massive solar flare has damaged the orbital habitat housing 200,000 beings from 6 different species. The main display showed images of the damaged station, its hull breached in multiple places, life support systems failing. Emergency lights flickered through the darkness of space as debris drifted away from the structure. According to our emergency response protocols, we must form an emergency response committee, assess the situation, coordinate with the affected species governments, and organize an appropriate rescue mission. Speaker Yalteth continued. The committee will meet in 4 hours to begin planning. In the human delegation section, Captain Deho felt his hands clench into fists. 4 hours to start planning. By the time a proper galactic rescue mission was organized, most of the people on that station would be dead. Representative Nick Sara of the Meridian Unity stood up. Speaker Yalteth, with respect, do we have 4 hours? What is the current status of life support on the damaged station? Preliminary reports indicate that main life support will fail within 6 hours. Emergency backup systems may extend that to 8 hours maximum. A murmur went through the chamber. Even the fastest possible council response would take at least 12 hours to organize and dispatch. Captain Yu Jin from the medical ship Hippocrates leaned over to whisper to Deho. My ship is only 4 hours away from Kepler 78. We could be there before their life support fails completely. So could the Terra's Hope and the New Soul, Deho whispered back. We could save most of those people if we left right now. Ambassador Sunmi overheard their conversation. Captain, we're in the middle of formal hearings. If we leave now to respond to this emergency, it could be seen as proving the Council's point about our disrespectful behavior. And if we stay here talking while 200,000 people die, what does that prove? Deho replied. The dilemma was exactly what the hearings had been about. Follow proper procedures and let people die, or act immediately and ignore established protocols. Elder Silthera of the Ethereal Collective requested permission to speak. Speaker Yalteth, I believe this emergency presents an opportunity for this council to test the practical applications of the different approaches we have been discussing. What do you propose, Elder? Asked Speaker Yalteth. I propose that we authorize immediate human response to this emergency, while simultaneously organizing our standard council rescue mission. We can then compare the effectiveness of both approaches. Representative Pelandra of the Oceani looked alarmed. Elder Silthera, that would mean authorizing the exact behavior we are here to examine as potentially aggressive. Yes, Elder Silthera replied calmly. And what better way to determine whether human rapid response is truly aggressive than to observe it in action during a real emergency? The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives debated this unprecedented proposal. Some species argued that allowing human intervention would compromise the hearing process. Others pointed out that 200,000 lives were at stake. Councilmember Velkan of the Sylvans stood to speak. I support Elder Silthera's proposal. We have spent 2 days hearing testimony about human emergency response methods. Now we have an opportunity to observe them directly. But what if the humans make the situation worse? Asked Representative Zixara of the Kef Collective. Captain Yu Jin stood up in the human section. Representative Zixara, may I address your concern directly? Speaker Yalteth nodded permission. Representative, my medical ship is equipped with emergency evacuation systems designed to handle exactly this type of disaster. In the worst-case scenario, we might not save everyone, but using council procedures, you will definitely not save anyone because help will arrive too late. The question, added Captain Deho, also standing, is whether you want to risk an imperfect rescue or guarantee a perfect disaster. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 24 species voted to authorize immediate human response. 22 voted against and 1 abstained. By the narrowest possible margin, the human ships were given permission to respond to the emergency. Captain Deho, Captain Yu Jin, Captain Dong Hyun, Speaker Yalteth announced formally. You are authorized to provide immediate assistance to Kepler 78 orbital habitat. This council will monitor your actions and include your response methods in our final deliberations. The 3 human captains ran from the chamber toward the docking bays. Behind them, they could hear the council beginning to organize their own rescue mission using proper procedures. 4 hours later, the Terra's Hope, Hippocrates, and New Soul arrived at the damaged orbital habitat. The situation was worse than the reports had indicated. Massive sections of the station were without power. Atmospheric pressure was dropping in multiple compartments, and emergency evacuation pods were launching randomly as automated systems tried to save who they could. This is Captain Deho of the Terra's Hope to Kepler 78 Control. We're here to assist with emergency evacuation. Terra's Hope, this is Station Commander Rektal. We have critical systems failures throughout the habitat. We're losing atmosphere in sections 7 through 15. and our main evacuation systems are offline. Understood, Commander. We're beginning immediate evacuation procedures. What happened next was captured by dozens of recording devices and transmitted live to the Council Chamber on Nexus Prime. The 3 human ships immediately deployed emergency pods, established atmospheric force fields around the damaged sections, and began rapid evacuation of the most critical areas. Captain Yu Jin's medical ship focused on evacuating the hospital sections where patients couldn't be easily moved. Her crew worked in shifts, using portable life support units to keep critical patients alive during transport. Captain Dong Hyun's cargo vessel reconfigured its holds into temporary refugee shelters, taking aboard families and non-essential personnel who could survive in basic accommodations until proper rescue ships arrived. The Terra's Hope coordinated the overall effort while providing engineering support to stabilize critical systems and prevent further deterioration of the habitat. They're not following any of our standard emergency protocols, observed Representative Pelandra as she watched the live feed in the council chamber. No, they're not, agreed Representative Zixara. They're just doing whatever seems most effective, and it was working. Within 2 hours, the human ships had evacuated 50,000 people from the most dangerous sections of the habitat. Their approach was chaotic and improvised, with crew members making decisions on the spot instead of consulting with their command structures. Look at this, pointed out Elder Silthara. Captain Eugen's medical team is treating injured patients from 6 different species simultaneously. They're adapting their procedures in real time based on each patient's physiology. How is that possible? Asked Dr. Kelthera. Proper medical treatment requires extensive preparation and consultation with species-specific medical databases. Human medical training emphasizes adaptability, explained Dr. Velthana, who had testified the day before. They learn basic principles that can be applied to different situations rather than memorizing specific procedures for every possible scenario. As the rescue continued, something unexpected began happening. Ships from other species, originally meant to wait for the official Council rescue mission, started arriving at Kepler-78 and offering assistance. Captain Kethval of the Oceani Defense Forces contacted the Terra's Hope directly. Captain Daeho, my ship is equipped with specialized aquatic evacuation systems. Can we assist with evacuating the underwater research sections? Absolutely, Captain Kethval. Coordinate with our evacuation control center and deploy wherever you think you can be most effective. Soon, ships from a dozen different species were working alongside the human vessels, all following the human approach of immediate action rather than waiting for official authorization. Representative Nixara of the Meridian Unity stood up in the council chamber. Honored colleagues, I request permission to deploy my people's rescue ships to assist with the Kepler-78 evacuation. The official council rescue mission hasn't been finalized yet, protested Representative Pelandra. Representative Pelandra, with respect, people are being saved right now while we finalize our mission, Nixara replied. I would rather help save lives immediately than wait for perfect coordination. By the end of the day, the improvised multi-species rescue fleet had evacuated 180,000 people from the damaged habitat. The official council rescue mission, which finally launched 8 hours after the emergency began, arrived to find most of the work already completed. The next morning, the council reconvened to deliver their verdict on humanity's place in galactic civilization. The chamber was packed with representatives from all 47 species, many of whom had participated in the Kepler-78 rescue operation. Speaker Yalteth stood to address the assembly.